mortgages and how they differ from other instruments? Well, let me turn it back to you. What makes a mortgage different? Remember, home loans are only one specific subset of mortgages. What is a mortgage by definition? Not necessarily a property loan, but it's collateralized by something, usually property, you're right. But there is a lien on something.
Did you say CDO and CMO?
Yes, I did. I said both of those.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's what we're discussing.
What's that?
The back by district assets?
Yeah, it's backed by assets. I mean, typically you'll back it by property. So more, a home loan is the most common kind of mortgage. But, okay, so what we do when we make these loans, we're bankers here, we sell these to Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae packages these up and turns them into mortgage-backed securities. One particular subset of mortgage-backed securities are pass-through mortgage-backed securities, which are simpler. The other major subset are CMOs, collateralized mortgage obligations. So these are debt securities whose cash flow stems from the underlying mortgages. That means if ultimate homeowners make payments on their mortgages, those payments go to the bank passes them through to Fannie Mae passes them through to the investors. We talked about the different tranches of the CMOs, they can pass it through in different ways, but it's just an example, okay? So the ultimate source of cash flow here is these individual homeowners, okay? In contrast, a CDO, or collateralized debt obligation, is not collateralized by an underlying pool of mortgages, but by an underlying pool of other debt securities, which can be mortgages, but they can also be other things. So it is not uncommon to find a CDO collateralized by CMOs. That's right. In this big pool of assets whose cash flows ultimately get passed through to the investor, one of the debt securities can be a CMO. It could also be other asset-backed securities. It can be car loans. It can be just backed by general business assets. But you have this pool of debt securities, much like for the CMO, except where the CMO is only collateralized by a pool of mortgages, the CDO is collateralized by other debt obligations, which may or may not be mortgages. So if, for instance, we had a bunch of corporate debt, and for some reason this isn't how it works, but if the bank made loans to 5 small businesses, and they packaged up these small business loans, and they were backed by other business assets, they could package up these small business loans, turn it into a security, and sell tranches of that security to people, and that security would be called a CDO, because it's backed by a pool of loans, debt obligations, which are not mortgages. So do we understand the distinction between a CDO and a CMO?
Yes, but are CMOs rated by credit agencies?
They can be.
Like CP? Not necessarily.
A debt instrument, so it is the debt instrument issuer's choice on whether or not to get a security rated by a credit agency.
Okay.
So the majority, in fact, all of CDOs are issued by private sector companies. So they're called private label instruments, versus CMOs are mostly issued by the government agencies. There are private label CMOs, but by and large they're public sector.
So we weren't here last week, just a quick thing, what CDO? CDO.
It's going to take me a long time to get to it. I would recommend that you get a copy of someone else's notes, but real quick.
I already have it.
Oh, perfect.
Notes, but I just.
Yeah, it's also online. But CMO stands for collateralized mortgage obligation. CDO stands for collateralized debt obligation. So debt is just a generic term for a loan, whereas mortgage is a specific kind of loan. Okay. Just to reiterate, next class, we're also not here for this, Fabian, but next class, I will be kidnapping all of you for 40 minutes later than I get to see you. That means we will start at 6:30 and end at 8:30. Fabian, is that okay with you? We had to make a judgment call. And in return, I will give you guys the next class period off. And in return, you will give me that class period off, and I appreciate it. So Tuesday we're staying till 8:30. Thursday we don't have class. What else will happen Tuesday is I will go over the homework. I did not get to grading it today. I apologize. And I will issue new homework. That new homework will be due the last day of class. We'll go over that later. And this new homework will be on mortgages and foreign exchange. Okay, let's get started. So I will be using two notational simplifications.
Are we still in chapter 14 mortgages? Or
No, we're moving on to foreign exchange. So we're moving on to chapter 15. Good question. Thank you. So I will be using X delta, because delta means change, to denote exchange. And I will be using FX to denote foreign exchange. I anticipate this will save me 364 letters over the course of this lecture. So, what is a foreign exchange rate? Who wants to take a stab? Simple definition.
Is it the fee to switch currencies?
So when I think of fees, I think of like I'm doing something and I have to pay a fee on top of that to do whatever I want to do.
Don't you have to pay a fee on that?
You do have to pay a fee, but that's not the foreign exchange rate.
Is it a conversion rate from dollar and Canadian?
I like what you said, but there's no need to tie it down to dollars. Yes, okay, so specifically, yeah, that's a good answer. There will be fees, Jay. No, not Jay, sorry. There will be fees, Ruben. We will not deal with fees in this class. It's more of like a transaction cost thing, but that's an important consideration as well. We sort of will. So it is formally defined, or can be defined, as the price of one currency in terms of another. Does that make sense? So, how many dollars would you have to pay me for me to give you a euro? How much yen could I buy from you if I pay you $1? Both of those are examples of exchange rates. Does that make sense so far? Okay. So, the foreign exchange market, what drives the foreign exchange market? Why is it that there's a very rich foreign exchange market between dollars and euros, and perhaps not as deep and liquid a foreign exchange market between the currency that Malta uses and the currency that Ghana uses? What's that? I'm positive that ties into it, but for instance, Zimbabwe has probably more of their currency in circulation than any other country, just because they deal in billions.
Isn't it like $1 million of their dollars?
Yeah, it's hyperinflation there. I don't know the statistic, but it's just a ludicrous amount. So it won't be level of currency in circulation. Does anybody have another guess? Exports and imports, exactly, and specifically trade that takes place between two countries. Okay, so Ghana and Malta probably don't have a whole lot of trade going on, versus the United States and Europe have a lot of trade going on. So that's going to drive the depth and liquidity in foreign exchange markets. Can you guys remind me again the concepts depth and liquidity in terms of a market? We talked about this in stocks and bonds. So liquidity is how much, we say a market is liquid if there is a lot of money floating around, if there's a lot of money being traded hands within that market. So for instance, the stock market is very liquid because there's large dollar amounts of stocks that are trading hands. We say that a market is deep if there are a lot of players in that market, a lot of agents. So the stock market is also very deep, deep and liquid market. Okay, so what drives the depth and liquidity of foreign exchange market is, as Jalene pointed out, the amount of imports and exports between two countries. So
The foreign exchange rate is what?
it's not the foreign exchange. The foreign exchange rate is the price of one currency in terms of another.
What was it you just said a minute
The
ago?
foreign exchange market, what drives the foreign exchange market. This might be an interesting digression to think about the efficiency of markets, particularly what makes markets markets efficient? Some of you who have dealt in other finance classes might have intersected this concept before, or others may just want to voice a guess. What's that?
Is it low transaction costs?
Low transaction costs is definitely a symptom, if you will, of efficient markets, or a quality of efficient markets. But what makes a market efficient is there being a lot of players in that market. Think about priced real estate property, okay? Think about farmland, all right? If I want to sell this piece of farmland, I can have a reasonably good guess on what it might fetch, but there's some people who are willing to value this farmland at 100,000. There's others who are probably willing to value this farmland at 50,000. There's a wide gulf. There's not a lot of consensus because there's not that many players in the market. In contrast to a residential home, it's very easy to value a home because there's a lot of people going in and out of the housing market, looking for houses, selling houses, buying houses, flipping houses. So what happens is you have a lot of players and prices tend to converge. You don't have these big gulfs between the bid and the ask, right? In contrast to the real estate example, to the farmland example, where there's maybe only a small fraction of the amount of people in the farmland market that there is in the real estate market. So what's the true value of this piece of farmland? Going to be tough to say. What's the true value of this house? Going to be a lot easier to say. So we can think of foreign exchange rates and foreign exchange markets along those terms. Because we have a lot of players in the Euro-USD market, it's going to be it's a very active market. It reacts to a lot of changes, and most people are going to agree on the price, on how much euros $1 is going to buy you. Better yet, how many dollars 1 euro is going to buy you. In contrast, again, going back to the Ghana and Malta example, not a lot of people, because those two countries don't do a lot of business together, there's not a lot of people who are actively seeking the Ghanese currency who live in Malta, and vice versa. So what's the true exchange rate between those two currencies? Going to be tougher to say. Did we understand that so far? Okay. These are all sort of digressions. Let's go into a quick example, and we're going to ask the question, should a profit maximizing company choose supplier A or B? A is, this company, let's say, is in the US, okay? And A is right in their backyard. A is another company that is in the United States. So we're going to call this domestic. Okay? And this domestic company is offering their supplies for $100. Okay, whatever supplies they're buying, per unit or whatever. In contrast, we have company B, which is foreign, and let's say Japanese, so we're dealing with something concrete here. And they're offering their supplies for 6,000 yen. Okay? How do we figure out which supplier to go from?
Convert.
Pardon?
Convert.
Convert. And how do we convert yen to dollars? Or conversely, we could convert dollars to yen if we want.
Find out the
Exchange rate.
Yeah.
Exchange rate, right? And exchange rates are denoted, remember, we have to turn this into a dollar. So we can think of it right now as this over 1, okay? What are we going to have in the numerator and in the denominator in order for the end result of this calculation to give us dollars? So we have apples to apples comparison.
Dollar over yen.
Dollar over yen, exactly. Do we see why? Simple math. this denominator cancels out with this numerator, and we're left with whatever this exchange rate is in dollars, okay? So let's see this here. Okay. This is a simplification. We'll get to how to elaborate later. Okay, so one question we might want to start with is, at what price would, or at what exchange rate would the company be indifferent between going to supplier A and supplier B? All right, and the way we'd solve that problem is by setting these two equal to each other, okay? So what we're going to do now, take another color. We're going to say that 100 US dollars equals 6,000 yen times some exchange rate. And the way to think of exchange rates as easily as possible is to set the denominator equal to 1. Okay? So the way to interpret that is, what fraction of a dollar would I have to hand over for somebody to give me 1 yen? Or more generally, what quantity of a dollar would I have to hand over? What quantity of dollars would I have to hand over for somebody to give me 1 yen? I say fraction because yen is, the exchange rate is something really high to $1, so it's going to be a fraction. But generally speaking, it's how much numerator do I have to hand over to get 1 of the denominator, okay? And if we set the denominator equal to 1 here, all we get is this dollar. Do you guys follow that logic? And what we do to figure out this exchange rate, is just move this over to the other side and get 1 over 60 equals the exchange rate. So we're going to have to hand over 1/60th of a dollar for 1 yen. If that were the exchange rate, this company would be indifferent between purchasing from supplier A and supplier B. Now, it does not take too much of a stretch of the imagination to figure out the egregious mistakes that I'm committing in making this simple calculation. What else does a supplier need to think about when choosing between A and B? Shipping cost, yeah. Shipping costs, and as group, what's that?
I was gonna say taxes, like import taxes.
Yeah, shipping costs, tariffs, taxes, as Ruben pointed out, fees that you'd need to exchange the currency. These are all important in the real world. If I have time, I will try to elaborate, and I will try to create more comprehensive problems. Yes, Ruben?
But do you really even need to do that now? Because when you buy foreign goods, aren't they usually in dollars? Like typically, like if you're buying.
Are you asking, do you need to exchange money?
Yeah, because
Oh.
if they do that, like, don't you just pay them in dollars and then? they
Well,
pay that?
if you think about it, it doesn't really make that big of a difference, because at some point, somebody is going to have to incur the transaction cost of turning dollars into yen, right? So if the supplier accepts US dollars, we're gonna pay the supplier in dollars, the supplier is gonna take these, because the supplier needs to spend yen. It resides in Japan. You know, they need to buy food for their family in yen. So they're going to take these dollars, exchange them, and use the yen. And on the surface, it would seem that they're going to pay the exchange fees, but really they're going to price that into your, the transaction cost. So it might be easier to think of it in terms of, these are just some costs. We'll abstract from who pays it, just like shipping. You know, sometimes if you buy something from Amazon, sometimes the seller will pay the shipping, sometimes you pay the shipping. Those are kind of technical details that are transaction by transaction, but we just need to remember that there's definitely some other costs that this simplified calculation doesn't consider. Okay, so what this is saying is, if $1 was worth 60 yen, this would be, yes, equal, right? The other way, of saying that is if the exchange, so this is the exchange rate of dollars to yen. We could do the flip side here, the exchange rate from,
Yen to dollars.
mm-hmm,
So how you actually write yen?
yeah. What's that gonna be?
60.
60, yep, pretty simple stuff so far, right? So, we gotta remember the 60 is a 60 over 1. So this represents, we'll have to hand over 1 US dollar for 60 yen. We'll have to hand over 60 yen for 1 US dollar. It's usually easier to put the 1 in the denominator, but depends on what exchange rate you're doing. Okay, so do I have your permission to erase this? Alrighty. So, just real quick aside here, there's basically two types of foreign exchange transactions. There are spot transactions and forward transactions. Can somebody guess at the difference between the two? Mm-hmm. Yes. So the rate that I agree to pay for 1 US dollar, the amount of euro that I'm willing to part with for 1 US dollar today is going to be different than the amount of euro I'm willing to part with for 1 US dollar 3 years from now. Obviously, the 3 years from now is going to be more speculative. But I'm going to answer both of those questions, I'm going to have to forecast what the exchange rates or what the currencies of each country is going to do, right? And so if I'm more interested in spending the money today, I don't really care what the currency is going to do 3, 4, 5 years from now. I'll go to the spot market and I will, get an exchange in the spot market. If I'm more interested in, let's say, I am expanding my company and by three years from now I want to have a European department, I might enter into a forward transaction to exchange US dollars for euro 3 years from now, and that way I don't have to incur the interest rate risk of, well, if I take the money right now and then the Eurozone falls apart, then I'm screwed. But if I agree to execute that transaction 3 years from now, there's going to be a different rate associated with it, but I save myself interest rate risk. I don't have to worry about the interest rates moving, the exchange rates moving. So, just two seemingly unrelated concepts the book talks about. I want you guys to understand it, but this is the same way of breaking down every market, basically. You have stocks, you have forward contracts for stocks, you have oil, you definitely have forward contracts for oil. So, yet another case here. Moving on to more related stuff. We talked about levels of currency, okay? Let's think about changes in currency real quick. So, let's think that the amount of money that a US dollar can buy you today, let's say US dollar can buy 6 widgets. And let's say tomorrow, US dollar can buy you 10 widgets. We say this currency has appreciated. It's worth more. It can do more for us. Okay? This is simple, intro to markets 101. It's just as easy to think of it in terms of euros. Let's say, feasible numbers here.
What does that say that you marked out?
widgets. Widgets are what economists just refer to as this random object that is just for the sake of argument.
Okay.
A firm manufactures widgets.
Okay.
And all the intro textbooks there. But let's say at today's rate, $7 can buy you 6 euros. But tomorrow something's going to happen. We'll talk about what can possibly happen. And these same $7 would now buy you 10 euros. Just same way of illustrating, same way of illustrating the same concept. And here we say that USD appreciates relative to euro. Okay? It appreciates in value. It's worth more relative to the euro. It can buy you more stuff, more euros specifically. You guys probably won't have too difficult of a time figuring out what we call the opposite scenario. If we flip the todays and the tomorrows here, if it started at 7 USD can buy you 10 euros, and now 7 USD can only buy you 6 euros, we say the currency has depreciated, right? Pretty intuitive stuff. So, appreciates versus depreciates. Okay? So, let's do a specific example here. Painful example from my real world experiences. When I studied abroad in London, £1 sterling, could buy you $1.66. Okay? This was the pinnacle of the exchange rate between dollars and pounds in, I don't know, the last 20 years. This is as high as it got. Now, £1 can only buy you, pardon?
Never mind.
£1, these notations, it doesn't matter what the symbols are. I can do any kind of currency. You can put a smiley face here if you'd like. That's just how it's written. Buy you 1.42. And for the sake of argument, let's say it buys you 1.4. Okay? £1 can now buy you $1.4. So this was 2009 I studied abroad, and this was today, 2016.
So the pound appreciated.
Or the dollar appreciated, either one.
Depreciated.
Yes, which is it, guys?
Both.
Whoa.
Both what?
The pound appreciated, the
The
dollar
pound, yeah.
appreciated.
The pound appreciated, the
Yes.
dollar depreciated.
Yes.
Who agrees with that?
I did.
Flip.
Fabian disagrees. Why do you disagree, Fabian?
It says appreciation means that it goes down and the pound had gone down.
Yes. Independent critical thinking. Don't rely on Jay. Good job.
That
So-
one-
It's usually good for I'm right along. It's pretty hard.
You're good. You got one of the better grades in the class. I'm not going to make this rule.
Okay, so you're saying £1 depreciated?
Okay, so this is why it's important to think of the underlying relationship instead of just which has the higher number and lower number.
His
That's a
face is
real
all
easy
red.
way to get confused. Oh look, this number went down, so the dollar depreciated. No. So what this relationship tells you is that £1 used to be able to buy you $1.66. Now £1 can only buy you $1.4. Okay? Let's think of the pound first. Does the pound appreciate or depreciate? It used to be able to buy you more, it can now buy you less. It must have depreciated in value.
Right.
If you just want to remember one thing and make a rule for yourself, then you can make a rule that whichever currency depreciates, the other currency appreciates relative to that first
So
currency.
it's backwards.
Yeah. No, you had the right words. You had all the right words.
Hasn't there been special cases where there's been currencies that both appreciate at the same time?
Yeah, there's plenty of currencies. But they can't both appreciate relative to one another.
The rate
Okay?
would be the same.
This is specifically how many dollars you can buy with a pound. You can't buy more and simultaneously less dollars with a pound. You can buy more dollars with a pound and more yen with a pound. And that's a case where the pound appreciates relative to both currencies, the two currencies. But again, the converse has to be true. If I can buy more dollars with a pound, that means I can buy less pounds with a dollar. So let's take this a step further and figure out how much something appreciated or depreciated. Okay? So this as a ratio is going to be, when I give you these things, I mean, you can do it with decimals. I like working with ratios, so you can see things. But this as a ratio is going to be 5/3. Okay? This as a ratio is going to be 7/5. Okay? So what's our standard textbook intro to anything to do with numbers formula for calculating growth or percent change? We did it in stock prices, we did it in the last homework assignment, I think I asked for a growth rate or something.
1 plus
What's that?
1 plus G to the T.
Okay, maybe my question was ambiguous. So, return. Do you guys remember how to calculate returns?
New price minus old price.
Yes, exactly, right? So, these are prices, because my very first definition was the price of one currency relative to another. So these are prices at the end of the day. And so we do the new price. What's the new price, guys?
140.
Yes. So 7/5, I'll call it, minus the old price is 5/3 divided by the old price, 5/3. And this will give us what?
New fractions.
A lot of fractions. Oh, no, I'm not looking for numbers. Just what's the answer going to be?
Return.
What's that?
The rate of return.
The rate of return, yes, but specifically, in this case, we don't use rate of return. We use, it can be interpreted as a rate of return, but we use how much the percent change in a currency. So a rate of return is a percent change, but we don't typically think of currencies in rates of return. We say, this is how much, which currency changed to. Yes, so we'll get there, right? So let's just convert these to common fractions here, make our lives easier. Which one's 6/15? This, yeah, we have to turn it into 15, so multiply by 3, so 21, 15, multiply by 5, minus 25, 15,
Oh, wow, I didn't horrible, man.
divided by 25 15s, right? All these 15s go away. We're left with -4 over 25, which equals -12%. No, I didn't roll that. -16%. Okay? So, how do you interpret this? Which currency moved 16%?
Pound did.
Pound moved 16% down. So we say that the pound depreciated 16%. We can, yeah, Fabian?
My only quick question is, do you always go in fractions, or can you just take the 1.66 minus the 140,
If you're-
divide by 140?
If you're typing it into your calculator, you'd probably save yourself time by using these things. I like to see fractions because I can tell you right away that this is $7 to 5 pounds, right? Yes, $7 to 5 pounds, and I can tell you right away that this is $5 to 3 pounds. I can't do that as easily. I can't say this is $1.4 per 1 pound. I mean, I could, but it's just easier for me to do this. If you guys have an easier time doing something else, by all means, go for it. Mathematically, you will. So the reason I wrote it in fractions is we can interpret this number as for every, we won't go there, forget about it. Let's see. Am I losing? No, sorry. Okay. All right, we'll leave it at this for now. Now, the pound depreciated by 16%. Can we all see how we got there? We took the new price minus the old price divided by the old price, okay? Does this mean that the dollar appreciated by 16%? Who votes yes? Who votes no? Okay, so the question once again is, we know that the pound depreciated by 16%.
The both must be true.
Fabian suggests that the reverse must be true, that the dollar must have appreciated by 16%. Who supports that?
You did, because you said it
But where is it? Well, it's a good thing you guys didn't support it, because numbers don't work this way. This 16% change is not going to be a 16% change we'll see in the other case, because this is 16% relative to the denominators. We're going to flip these to figure out the effect on the dollar. So it used to be the case that for every $5 you gave, you got 3 pounds. Okay, this is dollar per pound. This is dollar per pound, right? We want to, if we're interested in how much the dollar appreciated, we don't want to do a dollar per pound, we want to do a pound per dollar. We want to turn these things on their head, okay? So we start out at $1 equals, it's going to be, 0.6. Oops. Pounds. Here we have $1 is going to be just the inverse of that. Whatever 5/7 is. I don't know what 5/7. 0.71? Okay. Again, I like thinking of things in terms of fractions. I mean, really, we had no need to convert and then reconvert, but just for the sake of coherence. So, you just flip these fractions upside down. It used to be the case that 3 pounds would buy you $5. It is now the case that 5 pounds buys you $7. Okay? We're going to do that same calculation. 5/7 minus 3/5 over 3/5. We're going to turn it into common denominator again. So 5 times 25 35 minus 21 35 divided by 5 35. I messed up. There we go. 21, okay? New price minus old price over old price. That's going to give us 4 over 21, which is something like 18%, I guess?
19.
19%?
Nobody asked me.
Ouch. Not animosity here. So there's some explanation going on here. Chances are if someone doesn't understand, maybe other people don't understand, so why don't I go over this calculation again? So in the first case, we were interested in the change in pound. And so what we did is figured out how much a pound could buy us. It used to be the case that a pound could buy us $1.66. It is now the case that a pound can buy us $1.44. We plugged it into our standard percent change calculation as old price minus new price minus old price divided by old price, and we got that there was a negative 16% change. If you want to think of it in terms of returns, as Ruben was talking about, you can think of it as a negative 16% return to holding on to the pound. We have a different scenario here. I could give you this exact same exchange rates, but if I would ask you to calculate the percent change in the dollar value relative to the pound, you'd have to do the opposite. You'd have to ask, how much was a dollar able to buy us in the old days? A dollar used to buy us 3/5 of a pound. How much can a dollar buy us now? That same dollar is now going to buy us 5/7 of a pound. So it's easy to see that the dollar is now worth more relative to the pound. So we do that same calculation by taking these new ratios, plugging them in, and we find that the dollar appreciated 18 or 19%. So to figure out the appreciation and depreciation, it's important to keep in mind which unit we're interested in. Fabian?
The only actual thing is if you ask this on a test, which way would you like it, the fractions or the numbers? Because I'm looking at his numbers there, that 0.71 minus 0.6 divided by 0.6 does equal to 18%, while the fraction of 4 over 21 equals 19 and change.
That's a reasonable question from the student's perspective. I don't care. I care that you guys learn the concepts. If you guys are a couple of decimals off, and still have that calculation on the paper, then you clearly learned the concepts. It doesn't matter.
Chris will come in and follow the close up.
Well, I can't, the sun.
You can try to take a selfie with it too. That might be fun.
Oh, no.
Alright.
I'm not a selfie person.
I can fix the sign. I can't fix the sign.
You're gonna have to add some. Okay.
Yeah, it's not gonna work, but that's okay. I was just,
Sorry, yes, sir.
that's okay.
By the way, Crystal, I sent those videos to my friends and family.
Oh, did they? What'd they say?
Not a curtsy. I'm not really ballerina. Believe it or not, I know I'm great.
It's gotta be recorded.
What did they say?
They just, well, my grandparents on my mom's side, who I never met, were teachers, so.
Oh.
My mom thought they
Oh,
were
okay.
proud, and my friends just thought
Aw.
it was ridiculous to see me in a suit and a tie and people listening to me. Which you guys might think it's just as ridiculous. Okay.
Yes, we do.
I was out in the open. Okay. So, as Jialing alluded to earlier, or maybe made us think about earlier, as these rates change, as these exchange rates change, we can think about our first example and the answer of whether or not we want to buy from supplier A or supplier B might change if these exchange rates change. Okay? And so that's what we're going to get into next. Okay, so let's figure out the effect of currency fluctuations. Am I free to erase here? Did I hear no? You had your
Never
chance.
listen to me. You just, probably a bad idea.
Oh my God, this problem has such an easy solution.
Or does it?
Or does it? There you go.
I think
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, there you
Can you
go.
guys, Jackson, you alright? Okay. Not gonna comment there. All right. So, in our previous example, we had dollars to pounds. We could also think of it as pounds to dollars. Okay? Now let's think about it from four parties' perspective. Not the kind of parties on Fabian's shirt. Damn. So we can think about it from U.S. exporters, U.S. importers. As a Japanese person, Fabian, I'm offended.
Guess that's part of the story.
Okay? So there's four parties here. Book has it this way. It's also important to think of it as consumers. We'll get into that later. I might mess up when I explain this, but let's try here. So U.S. consumer and U.S. I'm sorry, British consumer. We'll see. Maybe I'll decide not to get into those. Okay, so if this, well, in both cases, we're going to think of appreciation. We're going to think of before you could buy 5 pounds with $1. Now you can buy 10 pounds with $1. That's a ridiculous exchange ratio. But in any case, we're going to think of the numerator going up. We're going to think of appreciation of the base currency. Yes, and the base currency is the denominator here. So if the, all right, I want you guys to think this through with me and make sure you guys all understand it, because it is confusing. if this ratio used to be 5-1, and now it's 10-1, we have the numerator going up, but what that means is appreciation in the base currency. The base is the denominator. What that means is the pound got better relative to the dollar. Not the dollar getting better because it's a bigger number, but the pound getting better.
Oh, yeah, 50% smaller.
Yeah. Okay. So, how do U.S. exporters feel if they used to be able to buy, let's see, they're U.S. exporters, so let's say they export to the U.K., all right? And they do a lot of business with the UK, and this exchange rate moved in such a manner that the British pound is now able to buy more US dollars worth of stuff. US dollars, the US exporters don't change their price levels at all.
Exporters love it, importers hate it.
Yes, we'll get that. Yes, that's the perfect answer, but let's methodologically think through this answer, okay? So, let's say I'm an exporter of, give me a product, guys, that's less appropriate.
iPhones.
iPhones, all right. Okay, I'm an exporter of iPhones based in the United States. US iPhone exporter. Okay? I do all of my business with the UK. So British companies and consumers who buy iPhones from me used to be able to buy, let's say, 6 iPhones from me for £1,000. Now, because the ratio, the exchange ratio between pound and dollars has increased, that is, each pound can now buy more dollars worth of stuff, and I haven't changed my prices at all. Now those consumers can not buy 6 iPhones from me, but can buy more iPhones from me, because their unit of currency is now worth more to them, relative to mine. Is there anybody who I lost here? Because this is a confusing concept, and we're just going to have to go over it again and again and again until everyone's on the same page, because that's more important here, okay? So, the concept is if if the foreign currency increases, so for U.S. exporters, the pound is the foreign currency, if the foreign currency appreciates relative to domestic currency, exporters are better off. I strongly encourage you guys to not memorize these tables, but actually understand the fundamental relationships. Exporters are better off because their consumers of their product can now afford more of their product, because the consumer's currency appreciated relative to the dollar. The consumer, you know what, the simplest way of thinking about this is if we were to look at exchange ratios of iPhones.
What if the product that the exporters are selling isn't like an iPhone, if it's something that they don't want large quantity to be sold? So it's like, say it's like gold or something. So they wouldn't want to sell more for.
Well, generally any sort of business is going to try to, well, depends on what you assume about businesses. But in any case, the business can always decide to increase prices. If they want to push demand down, they can increase prices and still be better off. All this is doing is increasing demand, right? So we have price and quantity, okay? This is the price of an iPhone. And let's see, we have demand this way, supply this way. If you arbitrarily reduce the price, what you're doing, let's say this was P1. You're moving along here now. This is the market price. Bless you. P2, you've just moved along this curve, so you have more demand, more quantity demanded. Okay? If that's too much quantity demanded for you, what you can do as a supplier is shift this curve out, or yeah, you can increase price again. That's a confusing way of thinking about it. But basically, what making something cheaper does is increase the quantity demanded. Does that make sense? And what we're doing when a currency appreciates, when the domestic currency appreciates, that means things in other currencies are cheaper for me now. Because I can buy more of other currencies' things with my currency, because it has appreciated. Okay, so US exporters, we're gonna go back to pound sterling here. Oops, thank you. US exporters are better off if the pound appreciates. Shelley?
What if they demand the same amount of product and not demand for the same kind of price?
So you're saying if I made my product cheaper, you're a British entrepreneur who needs an iPhone for his company, I'm a US iPhone manufacturer.
Yeah, I just kind of need 1,000 iPhone,
Mhm.
but instead of that, I just need a kind of the iPhone which worth like €6 or something.
Oh, okay, I see. So you're not necessarily interested in iPhones now because your currency has appreciated. You can move on to another product.
Yep.
You can afford something better.
Yeah.
In that case, you can make a case that that demand is going to go down. So that's going to be a shift in the demand curve in that case, right? This is getting slightly outside. Sounds okay. This is macro, but this product for this demand is going to go. The demand for this product is going to go down, and we'll see suppliers making less, and the price is going to fall. But that's something slightly different. In our economy here, we're holding everything else constant, except for just moving one variable. So if we just move this variable and say that this demand curve doesn't shift, then we can see that by raising the prices, quantity demanded would increase. Quantity demanded increases, then US exporters are better off. They have more people who want to buy their stuff. Okay, did we get that? All right. So what would happen, what do you guys think would happen if the US dollar were to appreciate in value?
For exporters, or?
Yes, for US exporters.
Then minus sign, because it would not, if the dollar went up, the US exporters would, oh, no, that was actually.
So
Me and my
if,
thinking.
They'd sell
I know I'm right.
what's that?
They'd sell less.
Why would they sell less?
Because the price goes up, so demand goes down.
Yes, now British people can't afford as many iPhones. They used to be able to buy 6 iPhones or 4 iPhones, but because the US dollar has appreciated in value, that means £1 sterling can now buy you less US dollars worth of goods. Then British people are going to be able to buy less iPhones. Does that make sense? So that's why there's a negative sign. How about US importers? This takes another step. Flip it, but give me a good argument, Jay. Take it.
Because you wouldn't be able to purchase as many goods from, say, Britain.
Yep.
If your dollar became,
Stronger.
yeah, stronger in relation to
In relation to what?
the pound.
Yes, right. So you're an importer, you buy a lot of things from Britain, and now your currency has appreciated. That means No, I'm sorry. The pound has appreciated, yeah. So you buy a lot of things from Britain, and now the pound has appreciated relative to the dollar. That means the pound can buy more dollars worth of stuff, But conversely, the dollar can buy less pounds worth of stuff. So you're worse off. So your demand for the British products decreases, and you're worse off. Okay,
So that's what the arrows up there represent?
this is appreciation. The arrows,
For, the first one's appreciation for,
this pound, so this ratio is increasing, and so this used to be, let's say, 1.66 to 1, and now it has increased to 2 to 1. Right? So the denominator stays the same, the numerator increases. Which currency appreciates?
second?
Nobody else answered. The denominator stays the same, these ones are still ones.
Mhm.
The numerator increases. Which currency appreciates in value?
Pound?
The pound. Because it used to be the case that $1 could buy you, 1 pound could buy you $1.66. It is now the case that that same 1 pound can buy you $2. So the pound appreciates. People in Britain are better off. You follow?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we're going to put a plus sign here for the same reason as this. Now, at this point, we can take an interesting digression and ask the question,
Can we explain why this positive sign?
this positive sign? Sure. Does anybody want to take a stab at it and test their knowledge of the material? Fabian?
I raised my hands, but I wasn't sure what question it was. U.S. importers, the plus sign, and the dollar got stronger.
Yes. So here the dollar got stronger.
Yes.
Okay.
The reason is because since the dollar got stronger, the U.S. customer, the U.S. importers were able to purchase more goods from British.
Perfect. What's that? Yeah.
3.
Makes it 3.
You bet you were a bit.
When in doubt. Okay, interesting digression here. When I, again, was studying abroad in England, I took a economics of the European Union class from a Greek professor, Cypriot professor, I don't know, and he told me that the euro is going to fall apart. The euro has no chance because you cannot have a monetary union without a political union. That is everyone's political objective. What's that?
Has it been an argument for a while?
It's been an argument for a while. Personally, I still believe it, but you guys make your own case. It's just a matter of reaching the equilibrium. But one thing that I didn't understand until a couple of weeks ago that has to do with this is why in God's name would Germany agree to continue being in the European Union? The Germans' mark was such a strong currency before it joined the EU. And it joined the EU for political reasons because of World War I, World War II, all that stuff.
The west side though was the strong one. not
What's
the
that?
east side.
Yes, the west side, the Democratic side versus the Communist side, East Berlin. But that was when the wall fell in '89.
I don't know.
I was just at the museum this summer. I should know that.
Yeah.
But what's that?
I'm gonna look it up now.
Yeah, I think it's '89, but I could be wrong. Mr. Brezhnev, tears on the wall. A famous quote.
I just know it from the Pink Floyd video.
Hey, you know, good job.
Yeah, great. I love Pink Floyd. Okay.
It was stronger. You were saying Germany's so strong.
Yes, thank you.
Why?
So why would Germany agree to be in this monetary union when their currency can be much stronger? They have all the Greeces and Italys and Frances and bums, just a bunch of bums that are bringing down their currency. They refuse to work as hard as the Germans work. The Germans have always been the hardest working people in Europe. Why would the Germans agree to subsidize everybody else? The answer comes down to this. Exports. Germany has always been an export-based economy. BMW, Volkswagen, German engineering, they sell a lot of their products. And by those people keeping the euro weak, Germany is better off. This shouldn't say you, I mean, you can think of it in the British, in the general sense instead of US and British, domestic and foreign. So, domestic exporters, if you're thinking of our domestic area here as the EU, domestic exporters, EU exporters such as Germany, are better off by having a weak currency. If the foreign currency appreciates relative to the domestic currency, that is, if the US currency appreciates relative to the European currency. Conversely, if the European currency depreciates relative to the US currency, exporters are better off.
So then were they worried about the euro appreciating?
Yes, they are very worried about the euro
So
appreciating.
that's ultimately why they.
Why does China peg, I'm sorry, I could point at you too, not you fucking. Why does China,
I know about China too.
all right, Sam, you just volunteered, man.
Oh, okay.
Oh, always one there.
What do you
Why,
think
why
about
does China
though?
keep their currency pegged? Do you guys know what pegged currency means? How would you? I didn't teach you to. Sorry, dumb question. But China likes to say that it doesn't, but realistically it does. These prices, as we'll learn later, are set by supply and demand in the market and by macroeconomic factors. Conversely, you can take the tack that many governments do and just say, hey, our currency will always and forever be worth $8 US, or 27 yen, or some other number. You can peg your currency. Okay, you can tie it down. That way, basically the exchange rates are arbitrarily kept from moving. So these rates fluctuate for very good economic reasons, like interest rates and productivity and general supply and demand. But by pegging the currency, you're keeping the exchange rate fixed, and your exporters aren't going to be hurt. China is a huge exporting nation. They don't want their exporters to be hurt.
How do you prevent it from changing if it's based on trade?
You just always say, anybody that wants to buy renminbi, how do I pronounce it? Yuan? What is it?
The RMB unit mean?
But, so, I think the unit is called yuan or something, like the dollar, but if I want to say cash, it's something like renminbi or something, no?
Yuan?
Yuan, yuan is like the unit, I'll just say yuan. I thought it was colloquially referred to as renminbi. No. Do you know, Jane?
I'm not from China.
I am so sorry.
Fail.
I sincerely apologize to you.
I'm Malaysian Chinese.
Malaysian Chinese? Okay.
Yeah, my ancestors are
Okay.
from China.
I've been to Malaysia and I would not have guessed that you were Malaysian.
That's okay.
That's on camera.
Did you record that?
Delete it.
Blackmail, you get an
One of many times I've messed up this class. Whatever. I'll keep rolling with the punches.
Today was gonna be a good day.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Sam. Thanks a lot.
You were on it today.
Glad someone's having fun.
To make a lot of money, you can just tell me that video.
No, it's okay. If they want to fire me, I'll be grateful. So yeah, forgot where I was going.
Nobody watches it but
The peg
our
dollars,
family
we're talking about the peg
and
being
these
pegged,
people in
currency
here.
being
Yeah,
pegged.
somebody asked a question?
Me,
What'd you ask?
like, how can they just determine, like?
Oh, so, yeah, well, they say, look, anytime you're gonna get yuan, you're going to get it from somebody Chinese. That'll be the source, right? In the secondary market, it can change hands a million times, but at some point, somebody is gonna have to go back to somebody in China and say, hey, we're out of our reserves, can we buy some of yours? And those Chinese banks can say, sure, you can buy your reserves, but you're gonna have to pay $8 US for some quantity of yuan.
Then why doesn't every major exporting country just peg their currency?
Because it has macroeconomic repercussions. There's a lot of downside, because what you're doing here basically is restricting a free market. And anytime you restrict a free market, there's a potential for something bad to happen. Some markets need to be restricted. Some markets need regulation. There's some free market outcomes which are worse than non-free market outcomes.
But China's they're economically strong enough to where they can do that, to push back on them,
And
right?
it's political too.
Yes, I'm sure there's a political aspect of it. You know, if you have a huge lobby from your exporting industries, then they're not going to let something like that happen. But yeah. So I'll try to think of a good example next time about how a country would be negatively impacted by pegging their currency. Yeah.
So
What's that?
I guess I could throw it off everything.
Yeah, no, I don't have a good concrete example. I just know that there are negative repercussions. There's reasons why people don't do that, but that's a very good question. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm not going to fill in these boxes. If you guys understand how to do this analysis, you'll understand, well, fill in the boxes, but you guys will interpret them. Yeah, you can understand that it's just the counters. Focus on understanding one, and then you'll understand the rule.
Now, what are U.S. consumers and British consumers? So you're talking about like, just
You
person
can,
to
you can
person?
think of, consumers as importers, that's why it would be the same thing. So, people who, yeah, you can think of them as a subset of
That's the
importers.
U.S. importers.
Mhm.
So US consumers, that would be negative, right?
Yeah.
Because it would have a negative impact on us.
Yes, if we buy a lot of stuff from,
Because their currency is worth more than ours.
Yeah.
Increase, so we can't, it takes
Afford
more
more.
of our money to buy their product.
exactly, yep. Okay. We're going to. This here. Hold on. Should I get bonus points? Reckon you guys know? Bonehead move. I'm sorry, Gene, I really am sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, or,
That's okay. A lot of people thought I'm Chinese.
okay.
but-
It makes me feel a little better that your heritage is Chinese, but I understand I would be offended if someone said I was, I don't know, Bulgarian, just because I'm Slavic.
You're not?
I'm offended. Okay, so, again, little tidbits of not thinking, but just memorizing. Foreign exchange is traded basically on over-the-counter markets, and by now I really hope that you all can give me a good definition of over-the-counter markets. Over-the-counter market is one where,
Things are sold over the counter.
anyone else? What's that?
Person to person?
Yes. No, actually, quite yes. No, it's indirect. So over the counter means dealers buy up a bunch of inventory. The counter is the dealership. So if investors want to sell, they go to these dealers and say, hey guys, you want any of our securities? If investors want to buy, they go to these dealers and say, hey guys, can I have some of your securities? The dealers make the market in the over-the-counter market.
I mean,
Is
it's
there-
online. What about like online? Well, I mean, is that technically dealing?
I mean, yes, if you have whatever platform, well, again, it's gonna depend on the circumstance. For instance,
Like, I just sent money to my father in Mexico. I sent
Okay.
him $200 American, which turned out to be like 3,000 something
Great.
Mexican pesos.
how do you send money to your father? Do you think you physically, like, it's those particular dollar bills that you're sending or that reach your father? No, what happens is
Yeah.
your bank account moves dollar bills into, some clearing account. That clearing account by what's what's the yellow MoneyGram or whatever? How do you send money?
XOOM.
Okay, I'm out of the, I haven't sent money, I don't think I've ever sent money in my life. Western Union, yeah, thank you, the yellow.
Some
one.
foreign market company.
Yeah, exactly. So this Western Union or XOO, whatever, they have just this pool of money sitting around. Their securities that they're dealing in are money. And so when you contribute to their pool, they take some other money out of their pool and they put it in your father's pool of money.
They make money off of the exchange rate, right? Because they control the.
Oh, yeah, that's those.
Yeah, like what,
That's
I
kinda
mean,
like
they don't
the-
control, like, they don't control it, but they have, you put in $200 in the dollar to a peso is 17 to 10. I mean, they can go 17.5 or whatever, or reduce it and make a profit off of that.
Yeah, so
Kinda
they
like a
make
transaction.
most of their money from transaction fees, but they're also potentially compensating themselves for the exchange rate fees.
Yeah.
Excuse me, if they're gonna have to charge. But basically, so that's an example of a money dealer. Western Union, you can think of it as a money dealer. These big international banks, there's several hundred of them that exist. They are money dealers, just like Western Union, for slightly different purposes. You don't use them to send money to your family and friends. You use them to execute foreign exchange transactions. So basically, these are the major players in the foreign exchange market. These are the people who are going to be sitting around and saying, hey, I can buy bananas in Guam for this many US dollars, and I can sell bananas to Mexico for that many US dollars. That means there's an arbitrage opportunity. I'm going to buy bananas here, sell it there. They don't actually do it with bananas, they just do it with currency. They say, okay, one currency is cheap relative to another. So I'm going to buy this currency, and then when the market catches on that hey, there's an arbitrage opportunity, it's gonna correct, and the currency that they bought cheaply is gonna increase, the currency that they shorted is gonna decrease. Don't have to know the mechanics of arbitrage in this class, but these are the banks that are sitting around and making all the exchange rates move based on a lot of fundamental analysis on the countries. We're gonna get into what that fundamental analysis
Those
is.
are the dealers, right, in the OTCs.
Yes, those banks are the dealers. I don't have a way of telling what time it is. What's that?
7:43.
Yeah, whenever you guys wanna stop me, otherwise I'll keep talking.
Keep going. That's 7 minutes.
I'm on it.
Does arbitrage happen often?
Yes. That's what these hedge funds, these, algorithms, does arbitrage happen often? I would say certain people are really good at arbitrage. When I originally gave you guys your case studies and your market failure projects, I wanted to assign the foreign exchange group to look at a very interesting and fascinating case study about when George Soros, a hedge fund manager, single-handedly took down the British economy through the foreign exchange market by buying Deutschmarks and short-selling pounds, and it just deflated the value of the pound to where Britain had to come on the air and say, guys, there will be no more dealing in pounds
Can we
today.
include that?
Yeah, if you guys want to include that in your analysis. By the way, with regards to these projects, anything new and exciting and interesting that you can teach me or the class, that's only going to count for you. If it slightly deviates from the purpose of the assignment or from, you can't pigeonhole it into whichever little bullet point I said this assignment should get, I'm not going to take off for that. That's going to be very valuable information. Please do not hesitate to teach us a new concept or give us a really cool example. Okay. Yes?
Didn't he make like $250 million in a year?
Oh, he made way more than that.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, he made way more than that. I think he made in a couple billions of dollars.
Oh, 91?
Or early mid-90s, that's all I remember, I don't know.
Yeah, that's when the game was still new.
Okay. So, just a little tidbit, the foreign exchange market is about $4 trillion a day. So a lot of money changes hands, it's a huge market. Yeah, and the thing about the foreign exchange market is they won't execute a transaction unless it's $1 million or more. So all these banks, they're doing big money transactions. It's not just a few traders. If you are a trader and you want to speculate on currency, there's avenues for you to do that. You can trade in swaps, but the actual foreign exchange market is what these banks are doing. And you might create a swap with this bank for them to give you a small sum of money, but they're going to charge you a fee, write a contract. But the actual foreign exchange transactions that these dealers are executing take place at least $1 million per transaction. The last point I wanted to make on this sort of miscellaneous stuff.
Sorry, that
Yep.
kind of job is arbitrage?
What's that?
That kind of job to buy and sell currency is
Mhm.
arbitrage?
Yes. Okay, so there's a market efficiency argument here. You guys bear with me. People in my profession love to believe in market efficiency. I am an outlier. I don't believe in market efficiency. But they say that if you can buy something cheaply and sell that exact same commodity somewhere else more expensive, you're going to have a lot of people doing that. And so you're going to have people looking, these arbitrageurs, looking from market to market about these same commodities. They're going to be looking at a ton of different dimensions. They're going to be looking for oil, they're going to be looking for bananas, they're going to be looking for iPhones, everything. And they're going to be trying to make arbitrage and make a free profit, basically. And the question is, if you have an efficient market, these arbitrageurs are what makes markets efficient. These arbitrageurs will level prices so that there exists no arbitrage opportunities for you and me. But if there exist no arbitrage opportunities for you and me, why do they exist for them? If markets are efficient, what incentive do arbitrageurs have to look for arbitrage? It's costly to keep monitoring different markets. So it's a chicken and the egg story. If markets are efficient, then arbitrageurs shouldn't be able to make money. If arbitrageurs can't make money, they won't be in the market, and markets will diverge and stop becoming efficient. Then arbitrageurs will jump in. So I don't really know exactly how that works, but it's a logical fallacy in my mind, so I have a hard time buying it.
There is arbitrage, loophole, like loopholes in the, like you said, it's costly. You gotta be
Mhm.
consistent on top of it. You gotta be, it's the same thing. It's like saying why McDonald's parks right in front of Burger King. I mean, saying they're both selling burgers, but it doesn't matter, it comes down to, you know, marketing, other schemes, and arbitrage is kind and.
So you're talking about just like business stuff, and that, there's a good
No,
story.
I'm talking about like the money too, like you're saying, like the difference in the price of currencies, like it's supposed to stay consistent with each other is what you're saying. But there are the fluctuations, and that's where arbitrage.
So if those fluctuations exist, then we can't say that markets are efficient, right?
Right.
So if I can buy a commodity at one price and sell it at another price and make a riskless profit, then I can't say the markets are efficient. That's the definition of efficiency. But that's a digression. You didn't hear it from me. If you tell any of the finance professors that, I'll lose my job for that little political faux pas. They don't care about that. But I'm not making the case as a caveat that markets are not efficient. I'm just saying I'm too stupid to understand how they are. Last thing I'll leave you with: if you ever travel, never, ever, ever, ever exchange money at the airport. Yes. So the exchange rates that we were talking about are retail exchange rates, that those wholesale exchange rates that those big banks have with one another. You're getting charged a completely different price that's going to tack on these fees. And the absolute worst price that you can get is the price that you get at the airport. It's like you lose 30% on the dollar consistently. It's like putting your money into one of those coin machines.
Wow.
That's also good. Okay, have a nice evening. I'll see you Tuesday. What's that? Yes, for an extended class. Thank you.
I went to Mexico at the airport. Now, this is my first time going, so I transferred